technical difficulties here. I appreciate it. Oh, yeah, I was just gonna cut the music.
Oh.
Let me see. Let's see. Nice. There we go. Thank you so much for coming out today to our advanced nutrition class. This is a really packed house. I thought it was going to be a little bit smaller. I was thinking it was like going to be like 12 people, and then they were like, no, it's going to be like 25. And I was like, awesome. The reason we decided to do this today is kind of a spinoff of our fasting class. As we know, we talked a little bit about how fasting can affect some of your hormones. Some of this information is going to be basic. Some of it is going to be a little bit more advanced. But my goal here today is for everybody to just get an overall understanding and expectation about how nutrition and your hormones can interact. So we're going to be talking about a little bit about food. We're going to be talking about a little bit about supplementation and some herbs in there as well. So why is this even important, right? Why do hormones matter? They're chemical messengers that pretty much coordinate all the actions inside of our bodies. So it's the responses between your organs, your tissues, right? And they coordinate everything for mutual benefit so that you can function the way that you need to. They stimulate energy, mood, reproduction, repair. And when it's inefficient, your body can get really thrown out of whack, even though technically all of your blood tests seem normal, right? So hormones are like this background system that kind of keep everything running smoothly. And if we don't necessarily have that system functional, we're going to start to feel really bad and we won't understand why. Right? So as far as nutrition goes, food is actually biological information, right? A lot of people think of it as sustenance. And while that's true, what we're doing is we are putting a chemical into our bodies so that we can elicit a compound reaction that is going to trigger some different things to happen, whether that be energy or digestion, absorption. All of these different things are happening because of the macronutrients and micronutrients that are in food. So they tell us whether it's safe, stress, nourish, depleted, right? They influence insulin and cortisol responses, some of the hormones we're going to be talking about today. And they can also determine what hormones are going to be produced, activated, and received by your cells. So it's important to look at the food that we're eating, right? So we're talking about calories versus nutrient density, right? The goal isn't to necessarily eat more or less, right? But it's to eat more effectively, right? The more nutrient dense food that you have, the better off it's going to be for your body ultimately. And these are the 11 most nutrient dense foods on the planet. There's another claim a little bit later that the most nutrient dense foods on the planet are organ meats. Both of those things, I mean, organ meats, you're going to get a lot of bang for your buck. I think they're talking about the most available different nutrients versus like what something has in it more specifically, right? But as we know, calories provide energy and nutrients determine how that energy is going to be used. And a calorie-focused approach often completely ignores the fact that they can impair hormone function, right? And the nutrient-dense foods help with hormone synthesis. Undereating can be a huge issue, right? Undereating is not the equivalent to fasting, right? Fasting is done very intentionally for a specific amount of time. Undereating is something that is chronic and that can affect your body over a period of time. But it commonly worsens fatigue, mood issues, and metabolic dysfunction. So we talk about stress, nutrition, and the nervous system, right? Chronic stress is extremely important when we're talking about hormones. It makes such a big impact. It shifts the body into what's called survival mode. So digestion, absorption, and your hormone conversion are deprioritized while cortisol demand increases, right? Inadequate nutrition amplifies the stress response rather than calming it down, and stress actually increases your nutrient requirements. So not only does it make your body burn more fuel, right? Or hold on to more things, but also you're not getting the absorption that you need. So your body is just completely kicking out valuable things that you would need on a regular basis. So when we're talking deficiency versus dysregulation with your hormones, right? So deficiency is simply the lack of the raw materials needed to produce hormones, enzymes, and neurotransmitters. That would be somebody who's underfed, right? Dysregulation is the hormones may be present, but they can be poorly converted, poorly received, or improperly timed. Proper nutrition addresses both of these things, right? So we're looking at our hormone support hierarchy. This is just like our basic overview. You want to stabilize your blood sugar, okay? Eat your adequate protein and your micronutrients, reduce your chronic stress loads, and then use your herbs and supplements strategically, right? There are a lot of places that might tell you like, oh, you need this and you need this next thing. Like, and while, you know, a lot of our mineral content and some of our vitamins have been diminished from our soil, right? It's always better to eat it first if you can, because your body will absorb it and then it takes it on a lot more effectively. Okay. With that being said, some people do need herbs and supplements, right? That's just the fact of the matter. What we mean by using them strategically, right, is basically having an actual understanding of how they function, what they're going to do, whether or not there's any type of crossover, and doing the minimum effective dose of those things, right, to get what you need. So we talked about cortisol. You know, it's your stress hormone. It spikes really high for short amounts of time if it's working properly. That's supposed to be the thing that kind of gets you going. It floods your bloodstream with sugar so that your body is able to move, and boom, you got to get out of there. You know, it's essential for your survival and your energy regulation, and it also helps to regulate your inflammation and immune activity. Right, this is something that cortisol isn't. Is not mentioned for cortisol enough. If you have high levels of cortisol, your inflammation is going to go up over time, right? And your immune system is going to overreact, or excuse me, it's going to decline. Healthy cortisol follows a daily rhythm. It typically peaks in the morning and declines at night, so that when you wake up in the morning, right, you're fresh, you're ready to go. If you don't feel fresh and ready to go in the morning, even though you've got 8 hours of sleep, there is an issue with your body's cortisol regulation, right? Chronic stress can disrupt cortisol timing and output. Raise your hand if you feel like you got a little bit of stress in your life, right? So chances are, most people in this room, our cortisol system is not functioning the way that it should, right? Now we're getting away from things like circadian rhythm, you know, where you're supposed to be waking up with the sun, going to bed when it starts to get dark, eating around those times, right? Getting outside, touching grass, all those things are really important, and they're things that we don't do really anymore in Western society. So those are things that are going to absolutely disturb your cortisol regulation. Now, when we talk about proper nutrition and cortisol balance, right? And a lot of these same suggestions for hormones, you'll notice that there's a common theme here, right? So we want regular meals to reduce any unnecessary cortisol spikes, right? Because your cortisol will shoot up if you don't eat enough, right? If you're underfed. That does happen for a brief period of time when you're fasting, but your body starts to regulate it over time. Adequate protein helps to stabilize the blood sugar and stress signaling. So yes, we need protein. Complex carbs help to signal safety to the nervous system. You do need carbohydrates, right? Electrolytes, especially sodium, they support adrenal communication. Electrolytes are just extremely key for your body to function, period. Your nervous system has a sodium and a potassium balance, and that is what allows you to send signals and fire messages from your brain down your peripheral nerves into your fingers and toes, or do whatever it is that you want to do with your daily life, right? So nourishment lowers your stress load rather than increasing it if you're doing that properly. Now, if you got poor nutrition and cortisol dysfunction, this means that you're skipping meals and you're forcing cortisol to maintain your blood sugar. Chronic caffeine use, definitely going to disturb that cortisol balance, right? Now, I'm actually, the doctors and I are doing a fast. We're doing a 3-day fast. But I'm challenging myself to try to make it through that fast without any caffeine. And it's been one day and I'm feeling it, right? And, you know, it definitely, when your body has or gets used to those certain inputs on a regular schedule, right, then you're going to start to promote more cortisol. So now I have more cortisol in my system because I don't have caffeine, right? Because I'm not getting that normal fix on a day-to-day basis. That low sodium intake contributes to fatigue, dizziness, and cravings. And then long-term undereating leads to adrenal burnout and hormone suppression, right? So stress plus restriction compounds dysfunction. So here's some key nutrients and herbs for cortisol, right? So vitamin C is going to support your adrenal hormone synthesis. Vitamins B3, 5, 9, and 12, you might as well just call it a vitamin B complex at that point, because the rest of them are all doing stuff that it's important to, right? But these specific ones support adrenal resilience and energy production. And then magnesium calms your nervous system and improves your sleep quality. Sleep is also really key, and not the main focus of this talk, but it's another one of those things that you can't do without, right? For herbal support, we got your adaptogens, is your ashwagandha, holy basil, and rhodiola. It helps to regulate your stress response rather than overstimulate it. And proper use improves resilience, not dependence. Quick note about rhodiola. Sometimes instead of helping people regulate their stress response. If they take it too late in the day, it can make you like really wound up. This has been shown to happen, or anecdotally with women in particularly. So maybe ashwagandha and holy basil. Right? Next, we're going to be talking about our thyroid hormones. So we know the thyroid regulates your metabolic rate, your energy production, and your body temperature. And your hormones influence your heart rate, your digestion, your mood, and even your cognitive clarity. Now, the thyroid is really, really important. And even subtle dysfunction can create widespread symptoms, especially in all those different regions. It depends on your proper hormone production, conversion, and then your receptor sensitivity. Now, there are two thyroid hormones, your T4 and T3, that we're going to be talking about. T4 is the inactive storage form, and T3 is the active form that's used by your cells, right? So most thyroid issues actually involve poor conversion, not necessarily low production. So we have a lot of T4 and not enough T3 for the body to function. Does that make sense? Okay. Cortisol actually stops that conversion. So the more stressed that you are, your thyroid isn't going to be able to make the T3 out of the T4 that you have inside of your system, and it's not going to allow you to do all the really important things that regulate your metabolism. Now, conversion actually occurs in your liver, your gut, and your peripheral tissues. So if your liver is shot, your gut is super damaged, and the rest of your tissues aren't functioning the way that they need to, say we're dehydrated or we're not sleeping, you're not going to be able to successfully utilize your thyroid, okay? Now let's talk about hyperthyroidism or hypothyroidism. This is basically slowed metabolic signaling. That means that you don't have enough T3. You don't have to read all the words on the slide. Trust me, I will read it for you, okay? It may involve low hormone production, but it's more often than not poor conversion of T4 to T3. This causes a reduced cellular responsiveness. It often develops gradually and is frequently underdiagnosed. Hypothyroidism happens a lot, okay? Especially in high-level stress environments where the liver is not functioning properly, say Western society, where our standard diet is full of seed oils and all kinds of amazing things or non-amazing things, the exact opposite of amazing things that are supposed to shut your body down, right? So you can experience this as fatigue and low energy, cold intolerance, slowed digestion, constipation, right? Brain fog, depression, low motivation, and then also dry hair, brittle hair, and nails, okay? It often actually develops because of chronic calorie restriction. So people who aren't giving their body enough of what they need, they start to get those thyroid issues, right? And they'll start to notice like they get really cold or they're really tired. It's not just a symptom of your body needing fuel, it's just your thyroid not effectively working how it should, okay? And then prolonged psychological and physical stress also contribute. Inflammation, autoimmune activity, gut dysfunction, and nutrient absorption are impaired. For nutritional support, first thing you want to make sure you're getting your adequate calories, right? Sufficient protein. There, once again, right? Protein is extremely important for your body. Your micronutrients that are required for synthesis and conversion, so making T4 into T3, making T3 into T4 requires iodine, selenium, zinc, and iron, and also blood sugar stability to reduce your stress-induced suppression. For hyperthyroidism, this is accelerating your metabolic signaling, right? So this could involve somebody who's constantly in a fight or flight, right? If they're just like shaky, they're really reactive, right? They've got excessive hormone production and autoimmune or inflammatory triggers. This could be the issue, right? It shows up like anxiety, heat intolerance, or like excessive sweating, rapid heart rate, tremors, weakness, insomnia, and frequent bowel movements or diarrhea. So notice that those two things have two completely different effects on the gut, right? And it often occurs due to autoimmune stimulation, excess iodine intake in some individuals, chronic inflammation, and poor nervous system activation or overactivation and low stress recovery. Some nutritional considerations, right? You don't necessarily want to add more if you're already experiencing hyperthyroidism. You can avoid your excessive iodine intake unless it's clinically indicated. Emphasize your anti-inflammatory nutrition, right? We're talking about your good oils. We're talking about your healthy fats. We're talking about your grass-fed meats, staying away from grains, staying away from dairy, staying away from sugar and alcohol, okay? You want to ensure you've got adequate calories to prevent your muscle wasting, and then focus on calming your nervous system, getting adjusted, right? Getting balanced out, and support your mineral balance, especially magnesium. We talk about insulin for your storage hormone. Insulin does so much more than blood sugar. We talked about it a lot during the fasting class, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but we know that it regulates how glucose enters the cells. right? So if your insulin receptor is active, it lets sugar into the cell, right? It signals growth, repair, and energy storage. Balanced insulin supports stable energy and hormone balance. The chronic elevation leads to insulin resistance and inflammation. Long-term insulin resistance is called what? There we go. You guys are smart. Proper nutrition and insulin sensitivity, right? So your protein first meals. Just gonna pause. I'm gonna say that like 12 times this evening. Protein is so key. Fiber slows your carbohydrate absorption, right? So if you're having something that you know is gonna be like particularly sugary, right? Soluble fiber, it's really good. It slows that sugar from directly entering your bloodstream and shooting your insulin levels up. Your healthy fats blunt that glycemic load. So when you do have sugar in there and they're kind of turning into reactive oxygen species and breaking down the rest of your body, having healthy fats helps that. And your constant meal timing supports a good metabolic rhythm. Okay. So when you have poor nutrition and you get insulin resistance, this is when your refined carbohydrates start to overwhelm your insulin signaling. Your liquid sugars, they bypass your satiety mechanisms, so you always feel like you're hungry. You've never got enough, right? You're always just going to want to go for that one more cookie or an extra snack, and it prevents your insulin from returning to your baseline. So it drives up fatigue, your weight gain, and inflammation, and also powdered foods trigger insulin spikes. So things like protein shakes, right, or pancake mix, right? Even if you're not haven't even added the extra syrup or the added sugar, yeah.
What do you think about like the powdered collagens? Everybody's like, but can I just do the powdered collagens?
Yeah.
In my own bone broth?
Mhm.
That's the question I'm getting. What do you think?
So you can use it, right? You're still getting the nutrients, but the thing is that the molecule is super small, so it's going to trigger your insulin to activate, right? So it's just the size or the powder is so small. These are going to be your key nutrients. You want your magnesium to improve your insulin receptor sensitivity, chromium, which will enhance your glucose uptake. Your soluble fiber, like I said, slows down your sugar absorption. B vitamins support your carbohydrate metabolism, and then your ALA improves your cellular glucose utilization. That's alpha lipoic acid. And let me know if I'm going too fast for you guys. Here's some herbs for your blood sugar regulation. Berberine improves your insulin sensitivity. Now, don't just shoot from the hip on this one. I recommend like consulting either your doctor, come talk to me if you do notice yourself being insulin sensitive and taking berberine, because it can cause some pretty drastic changes in some people. So my recommendation for this is to always start conservatively. Okay. Cinnamon enhances your glucose regulation as well. Personally, this is my favorite spice. I think it goes with everything, right? So it enhances your glucose regulation. It does all these amazing things for your body. Gymnema reduces your sugar cravings, right? And these herbs, they support, but they don't replace your dietary foundations. There's also something else called Gurmar, which stops your body's ability to like process sugar orally. So you don't get like that sweet taste inside of your mouth. You can take it and then eat something sweet and it literally will just taste like chalk. So if you notice yourself having a struggle there, yeah.
Does it matter how you take the cinnamon? Because I like to boil the cinnamon sticks. Is it better just to sprinkle the cinnamon on something?
That's a great question. I'm not sure about the application. If you do boil it, you're still gonna get the essence of it, right? But I feel like having the actual fibrous components in there are gonna help as well.
Can I just comment to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So cinnamon is the bark of a tree, right? And the great cinnamon is in Vietnam generally, or Ceylon they say, but for Vietnam for sure has great cinnamon trees and forests. But the bark you have to kind of, you can boil it. Medicines are made that way. Adding cinnamon to your broth even is a great idea. Like to, especially now in the winter, you want to have more bone broth this time of year if you're doing stuff like that. But add cinnamon bark, which is the sticks. That's the little bark. And then if it's powdered, it's a little more processed, but it's still good for you.
Cool.
Thank
Cool,
you.
cool, cool. All right, let's talk about our sex hormones. Your estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. They affect your mood, your energy, and your body composition. All of your sex hormones are synthesized from cholesterol. So cholesterol is important to have in your body. Shocker. Balance depends on your production, conversion, and your clearance of these hormones, right? They're not meant to just stay around and stick around forever. You are supposed to be able to process them out effectively when needed. Chronic stress disrupts all three of these, right? So try not to stress yourself out. Get to a place where you can relax, right? Balance things out. If we're looking to make some changes in our sex hormones, especially, chronic stress will take away from the precursors. So instead of cholesterol turning into estrogen, it'll turn into cortisol, and your body won't have what you need to do as far as that estrogen pathway goes. Now, for proper nutrition and hormone balance, right, your dietary fat is required for hormone synthesis. That's where your cholesterol comes from. It's a necessary building block. Protein supports your hormone binding transports, and undereating suppresses your reactive hormone output. Also, your cruciferous vegetables, they contain a compound called DIN. That's going to be like your broccoli and your dense leafy greens. This is a compound that helps the body process estrogen more effectively. Right, so if we have too much estrogen lingering in the system, that can cause a number of effects on the body, especially now that we're being exposed to xenoestrogens in our foods and also in some of our products, right? And xenoestrogens are just like fake estrogens. So when you got your estrogen metabolism, it's actually metabolized in the liver. Fiber binds to estrogen for elimination. So fiber is not only important for your insulin or your blood sugar balance, but it's also important for your estrogen, right? And then poor gut health can also lead to your estrogen recirculation. So if you don't get it out of your system, your estrogen will creep back into your system and it'll start to cause problems. Your detox pathways require adequate micronutrients, right? We're talking about your iron, we're talking about your B vitamins, we're talking about your electrolytes as well. And so your estrogen health is dependent on your liver health, your gut health, your blood sugar stability, your stress regulation, and your adequate nutrition. Now, when you start to get poor nutrition imbalance, it's often due to poor breakdown and elimination, right? Sometimes it can be from excess production, but this is typically where it's going to be coming from. So your liver is going to be overloaded. That's going to be your alcohol, your medications, your inflammation, your nutrient deficiency. That's going to drastically slow down your estrogen clearance. Gut dysfunction allows estrogen to be reactivated and reabsorbed instead of excreted. And then you got your low fiber intake. Your blood sugar instability increases estrogen activity via increased what's called aromatization, right? And then your chronic stress will start to divert resources away. Oh, and then your low progesterone as well. Often due to stress or underfueling, that can create a functional estrogen dominance, which means that you don't have too much estrogen inside of your system. There's just not enough balance. So our key nutrients that we need there are zinc, right? It supports your testosterone and progesterone. Vitamin D, which improves your hormone signaling. Magnesium supports your relaxation, sleep. B6, right? There's something called Vitex as well. It's called Chase Trees, so that can support your progesterone regulation. That brings you back into your estrogen and progesterone balance. Maca root supports your libido and energy, okay? And then desiccated reproductive organs provide tissue-specific nutrition. So you can actually eat desiccated, like beef testicle or ovary, fallopian tube, things like that, right? And it does wonders for your body, honestly. Yeah, it's in a capsule. Yeah. People were making some faces on that one. Yeah.
Some people don't waste the animal, they take every part of it. And what's cool about that in Oriental medicine is that the tissue is already, like if it's a mammal, and we are mammals, then it's easier, like the body doesn't have to try to create from something like grass. It's creating from something that is already like you. So it's easier to go directly to where you need it.
Exactly.
Sense, you guys? Yeah. So that's like why people are like, I was never gonna have. I was 22 years a vegetarian. I was never gonna have like oxtail, for example, was not in my culture.
Shame.
I was like, what?
So good.
I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and it's super helpful. This past month has been amazing. So there you go.
Absolutely. So these are some extras about testosterone. So all the following do apply as well. But specifically, there are some really great testosterone supplements out there. These are like the common things that they have in them. So we've got your zinc. Boron is actually really, really good for guys. There's a couple of herbs in here. Coleus for Shokli, fenugreek, KSM66, which is a specific kind of ashwagandha, right? Tonka Eli, and then maca. And all of these things combined together help your body, not necessarily... it helps your body produce the testosterone that you need in order to efficiently run, right? So it does, yeah. So I take a testosterone support supplement. There's one called Testosterone Plus by a company called Nophoric. And I think it's really great. unfortunately, as men, we have lower testosterone levels than ever. So, and that's due to a couple of different things, right? We got our microplastics, we have our chemical exposure. And as a part of a men's retreat and a men's group, so I help to facilitate some of the changes and challenges that gentlemen are experiencing. So I had a friend who was, at the time, I think he was 29, and his testosterone was like 150, right? Now you should be like in well into the like the mid to high hundreds at that age, right? And he went on this supplement, and 30 days later he was almost at 300, right? And it was just about giving your body what you need in order to actually make what you need, right?
Speak to please, for a second, to the male and the female intake of testosterone supplements.
Okay, so testosterone is also really, really important for women, right? It helps you with your focus. It helps you with your drive. It helps you with your metabolism as well. Naturally, you're not supposed to be testosterone dominant, right? There should be some type of balance. Before you start taking testosterone supplement as a woman, I would recommend getting your hormones tested first, just to make sure that there's not something else that's happening, right? If your estrogen, progesterone levels are thrown off, right, it might not be that you're super low in testosterone. It could be that your problems are coming from a different source. But testosterone supplements are viable, but I would recommend starting with your basic foods that help to support the pathways, right? Instead of jumping into something like this. This supplement was specifically designed for men. While it can be helpful in some extreme cases, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. Cool. So we're talking about a neurotransmitter system now. This is your neurotransmitters. They regulate mood, your motivation, and your calm, right? So serotonin, dopamine, and GABA are the big three that we're going to be talking about. We do have others, right? Like your epinephrine, norepinephrine. That's going to be like your adrenaline system. Your acetylcholine, right, which helps your body fire your neurons and move your muscles, things like that. But your serotonin supports your emotional stability. Dopamine drives like your motivation and your reward system. Serotonin also has to do with like your long-term goal setting, right? So dopamine is more like pleasure. Serotonin is joy or peace, right? GABA promotes your relaxation and your sleep. People have deficiencies in that or a dysfunction in the way that their body's ability to promote that. If we have people who have trouble getting to sleep, right, are always really high bound, their GABA is typically not functioning properly. They're made by amino acids, which are your building blocks. So make sure you got to get your proteins in there, your healthy fats to support your nerve signaling, and your micronutrients. They enable synthesis and breakdown. Your gut health strongly influences your neurotransmitter production. And the reason that is because most of your serotonin is produced inside of your gut. I think it's about 90% of your serotonin is made inside of your intestines, right? And about 50% of your dopamine, right? So people who are experiencing psychological issues from irregulation of these two neurotransmitters, they definitely can start with their digestive system, okay? So for your serotonin, tryptophan is your serotonin precursor, also known as 5-HTP, which is the precursor that becomes tryptophan. You can take that in supplement form. Vitamin B6 is what enables the conversion, and then magnesium, once again, supports your overall nervous system calm. Your omega-3s are going to be super, super important because they bring anti-inflammatory aspects to your gut to make sure that you can actually do what you need to do to produce these things. For dopamine, your tyrosine supports focus and motivation. Your iron and copper are what enable that synthesis, right? So if you don't have enough of either one of those things, you're going to be having some issues there. Undereating can reduce your dopamine output pretty drastically, and then chronic stress will blunt your reward signaling. That's why you're more likely to get a little crazy when you're stressed out, right? You don't necessarily get the satisfaction of doing the things that would bring you average levels of satisfaction. You have to push a little bit more. We got to take a little bit further step. Maybe have one more cookie or another slice of cake when you're chronically stressed because your dopamine signaling pathways aren't functioning the way that they need to. So for your herbs and your neurotransmitter support, L-theanine is a really, really awesome supplement that you can use. It's found in a bunch of different supplements that are good for the mind. Helps with just bringing an overall sense of calm to your body, right? Rhodiola is one of those things that helps to improve stress resistance, but once again, heed the warning, right? Some people it works, some people it can kind of amp them up a little bit. So you've got your ashwagandha and your holy basil. Passion flower supports your GABA activity, and once again, your herbs should support you. They shouldn't overstimulate you, right? Now we're talking about what Michelle's talking about back there. This is your organ nutrition, right? These are considered to be the most nutrient dense foods available. I know liver was like third on the chart up there, but it's because they're so bioavailable and they have all these vitamins and cofactors and micronutrients. Like she said, when you eat them, your body will take that and give it directly to the area that it's needed, right? So there, it minimizes the process of having to break things down, sort them, and then shift them to where they need to go, because your body immediately recognizes this and it's like, oh, I have one of these. Here you go, take that, you know. It supports your tissue-specific function, as I said, and then modern diets rarely include organ meats. This used to be something that was like really, really big back in the day. We used to not waste the animal, right? You would eat the whole thing, okay? Commonly used desiccated organs are your liver, your adrenal glands, your kidneys, right? Your thyroid, and your reproductive organs, as I said, and some people had some really shocked faces in the back there. Who benefits most? Individuals under chronic stress. We got your nutrient depleted patients, right? Your hormonal dysregulation cases, and those unable to tolerate synthetic supplements. So for some people, when they eat supplements, they get a little sick, right? They get queasy, their body can't keep it down, they feel like nothing works for them. Organ meat is a really, really great place to start. Or if you feel uncomfortable just eating it as is, you can take the desiccated form, which is chopped up into little bits and delivered in a pill capsule. Yes.
Top two, you said number 3 was liver, but what were the other two?
We had liver, your adrenals / kidneys, and your thyroid, and then your reproductive organs as well. Yeah. Really great. Oh, I didn't put it in here, but a really great brand for your organ-based supplements is called Heart and Soil. I think I've suggested it to a few. They make one called Her Power that has been really, really reputable for helping women through perimenopause and menopause, postmenopause as well. Yeah. So that's if you're interested in that, check it out. It's called Heart and Soil Supplements. I got yeah, and soil like dirt. Exactly. Obviously, check for your safety and quality. Right, you want something that's grass-fed, freeze-dried. It's not a replacement for whole food nutrition necessarily, but it can be an addendum, right? So if you want to go ahead and eat those organ meats like as is, chop them up, fry them, you know, don't fry them, because that takes away some of the nutritional value. But you want to avoid your excess use when you have too much iron in certain conditions like that. And as always, it's context dependent, right? Don't just like take whatever just because you feel like it'll be good for you. Like if you don't necessarily need it, then you know, same thing as supplements. Don't throw some extra on your plate. So we're talking about menopause here, right? A lot of people just equate menopause to loss of estrogen. It's not just that, right? It's a shift from hormone abundance to what's considered hormone efficiency, right? So your body does lose the production of some of these hormones, but also during that system, or during that series of changes that happens, it has to learn what it learn to use what it has more effectively, right? So ovarian hormone production declines, and then your body relies more heavily on your liver, your gut, your adrenals, your thyroid, and your brain, right? And symptoms start to emerge when these systems are already strained, as they are in so many people. So take a second to talk about estrogen metabolism. It does not completely disappear in menopause. Small amounts still circulate and must be properly metabolized. They're usually created by your fat tissue and your adrenal glands, okay? If you got poor liver or gut function, it can lead to estrogen lingering too long, it recycling instead of being eliminated, and that's how we get hot flashes, breast tenderness, mood swings, and what's considered estrogen dominant symptoms, even though you're low on your labs, right? It's just your body is not kicking it out the way that it needs to. Estrogen normally supports your thyroid signaling. So as it declines, your thyroid efficiency drops. Your T4 to T3 conversion becomes stress sensitive, right? So your cortisol is able to interrupt that transition a little bit more effectively, and your blood sugar becomes less stable. So consequences include fatigue, weight gain, brain fog, cold intolerance, and it often masks or unmasks functional hypothyroidism, right? So because you've had estrogen as this buffer for so long, your thyroid has been able to operate down here, right? And you've just been able to kind of do what you needed to do or scrape by because of the amount of estrogen in your system. But now when that estrogen starts to drop, we're revealing how the thyroid is actually functioning, and then that can let us know what's actually happening in your system, okay? We talked about the stages of menopause. We did talk about postmenopause up there as well. It's going to bring that up, right? You can see how your estrogen levels drop, right? And then as you age, you get your permanent cessation of your period. So we talk about your progesterone loss and the balance and your cortisol takeover. So progesterone also declines as your estrogen drops with menopause. It's a common sleep supportive and stabilizing hormone. And the loss of it creates anxiety, poor sleep, and then heightened estrogen sensitivity. So the body will compensate by increasing cortisol because your body is still taking that cholesterol and pushing it into other pathways, right? Also, you're getting your poor sleep and your anxiety, so your stress is going to be up. And then menopause can become a stress amplifying state during that time. So we talk about dieting and menopause, right? So calorie restriction actually increases your cortisol levels, right, during menopause. We talked about it, it does it normally, right? But your cortisol will block your estrogen metabolism, like we talked about, and that undereating will suppress your thyroid function of a thyroid that's actually probably not working the way that it needed to begin with, right? And then your protein and micronutrient deficiencies can worsen your mood and sleep, right? It's not the time for aggressive restriction. It's a time for nourishment and regulation, okay? So it doesn't mean like, okay, like you're going through menopause, you see you've gained a bit of weight, I need to go on this crazy diet and start doing all these like back-to-back things. It's time to build a routine of nutrient or foods that are nutrient dense so that your body can have time to regulate, have time to adjust, to get used to a schedule, lower your stress hormones, and then we can go from there, okay? And support the thyroid as well. The goal is to improve your hormone signaling, your stress resilience, and your metabolic stability. Okay, so it's not just losing weight becomes a priority. This has to be done in a regulatory way because the body is functioning with more or heightened levels of efficiency when it comes to your hormones, right? So things work a little bit differently. So your nutrition is a signal, right? So your food informs your hormones inform your behavior, and your behavior reinforces your physiology, right? So if you're eating a bunch of sugar, you're gonna have your hormones that are resistant to sugar, thus you're gonna crave sugar, which is gonna make you eat more sugar, right? And the same thing works in the opposite way. Your balance emerges when your signals align. So if you wanna know more about your hormones, this is a really great test. It's called the Dutch test. They can break things down for you about where you might be, talks to you about your estrogen, progesterone, testosterone levels, your thyroid hormones, your cortisol levels. All these different things are really, really key in terms of understanding where your body is at in this place and the steps that you need to take moving forward, okay? Your clinical takeaways from this talk are going to be to stabilize your blood sugar first, right? Support your stress before your restriction. So you want to lower your cortisol, make sure that your nervous system is relaxed, right? And your body is getting what you need in terms of your micronutrients and your good healthy fats, because your nutrients are what allow your hormones to function properly. And your supplements, they refine you, right? They do not replace your foundation. So these are things that we're using to kind of make some polishing changes, right? Not to completely overhaul a lifestyle that's been derailing your hormones for years and years. So when we start to make some of these changes, right, it's not just like what's the best supplement that I can take in order to balance out my estrogen levels, or what's the best supplement I can take in order to do this, that, or the third. We're going to start to talk about some very basic things like where is most of your stress coming from in life? How are we, using techniques to regulate that? What time are we eating? What's our circadian rhythm like? And those things have to come first, right? It's the lifestyle that needs to become the priority. With that being said, are there any questions? Cool. Thank you. And as always with the talk, there's 10% off discount for our supplements this evening. Yes. We have to order that one for you online.